Good day, everyone. My name is Omoyemen Lucia Odigie-Emmanuel. I will be talking to you about using a human rights perspective to address loss and damage. The IPCC, in its sixth assessment report, stated that adaptation and mitigation actions that prioritize equity, social justice, climate justice, right-based approaches, and inclusivity lead to more sustainable outcomes, reduce trade-offs, support transformation and change, and advances climate resilient development. Loss and damage is a policy term that refers to the adverse effects of climate change that people are unable to adapt to or cope with. At COP28 and the fifth section of the CMA, operationalizing the fund for responding to loss and damage was achieved. It is to operate as an entity entrusted with the operation of the financial mechanism of the convention under the guidance of the COP and CMA. Loss and damage and its impact on economic and social rights was a very key aspect of the mandate of that fund. And it's to address economic loss and damage, including those due to that affect income, livelihood, crops, assets, and infrastructure, impacts the enjoyment of human rights, including economic, social rights, such as rights to health, food, housing development, decent work, and an adequate standard of living. It is also to address non-economic losses, which includes loss of life, health, mobility, the loss of territory, cultural heritage, indigenous knowledge, local knowledge, or societal or cultural identity, and the loss of biodiversity and economic system. Studies, observation, and several perspectives have shown the unequal impact of loss and damage on different population groups and countries. It is essential that reprioritizing loss and damage through integration of human rights law and governance perspective is essential to achieving a just outcome that transforms lives and addresses loss and damage effectively. In achieving this, the language, arrangement, mechanism, and architecture for loss and damage should reflect human rights principles, including access to information and data, transparency, participation, accountability, inclusiveness, intergenerational equity, equality, and non-discrimination. Participation of all affected communities and integration of broad voices will ensure that the full scope of loss and damage is addressed. In sum, advancing a human rights based approach and perspective to funding arrangements for responding to loss and damage is essential to its success and the prevention of further injustices. A human rights-based perspective and approach to loss and damage is a matter of fulfillment of the legal obligation of states flowing from several human rights commitments signed to directly or indirectly. Using the human rights framework, we ensure that those who experience loss and damage are entitled to access to justice, effective remedy, reparation, restoration. And although the Paris Agreement recognizes the need for a right-based approach, the reality of its implementation and its inclusion leaves still much to be desired. Going forward from COP29, there is a need for a drastic change that promotes realignment to actual commitment to respect and promote human rights while dealing with climate change, particularly loss and damage. A human rights-based approach to loss and damage requires specific consideration of the rights of vulnerable countries, vulnerable persons, including persons with disability, children, persons in correction centers, women, the elderly, and other segments of vulnerable groups. In recommendation, we want to ask for more commitment to provide and strengthen legal and policy framework for addressing the impact of loss and damage on human rights. There is need to integrate a human rights and equity-based approach to loss and damage in climate laws, policies, assessment, and programs.